have to really escalate the noise we make so that we'll be heard.
Welcome to Gay USA. I'm Andy Hum.
I'm Ann Northrup with one word for you, and that word is Alabama.
Turn out the lights. Come on, turn out the lights. Turn out the lights. A federal judge has ordered that state to open marriage to gay couples, and then she did it again.
But, of course, the right wing is fighting back. So the one-out lesbian Alabama legislature is threatening to retaliate against them because they claim to be family values types, and they may not be.
Not the whole lesbian legislature, just a legislator.
Yes.
The Mormons, this may come as a surprise, are now acting like that they are for LGBT rights, but with a dangerous catch.
Yeah, like it's all nonsense. We'll get to that. Big win in Arizona for a woman who won a landmark decision dismissing her arrest for walking while transgender.
The department store, Saks, has backed down in their challenge to the right of transgender people to sue for discrimination.
But the fire chief of Atlanta, who you may remember was fired for pushing an anti-gay, anti-woman, and anti-Semitic gospel in his book, has filed a suit saying he was discriminated against on the basis of his religion.
You may have read that President Obama went to visit foreign leaders, many of them quite anti-gay, and all we got was this lousy T-shirt.
We'll talk about a new gay way to fight off Alzheimer's.
And I'm going to review Turgenev's A Month in the Country at the Classic Stage Company, starring Peter Dinklage and Taylor Schilling.
But we start in Alabama. Doesn't everything start and end in Alabama? Much to our surprise, no one would have predicted this, I don't think, until maybe very recently. We now have a decision from a federal judge in Alabama declaring their ban on same-sex marriage unconstitutional.
This is another George W. Bush appointee, Callie. First name is Callie. We're not going to attempt her last name. She found that the ban violated the couple's right to due process and equal protection. And these are the two things that are coming up in the Supreme Court case, the 14th Amendment.
There are actually two cases she decided. The first was for a female couple who were married in another state.
Got a picture of them there.
Sued for recognition of their marriage in Alabama. And the judge said, yes, the state should recognize their marriage.
Yes, the case was actually about their inability of one spouse to adopt the child of another in that couple. And you saw the kid there. Go ahead.
Oh, well, they're also actually on one of these funding sites asking for contributions to pay the legal bills.
They apparently did the case on their own.
Exactly.
But
and they're seeking $40,000. Now, there was a second case. Two men who do live in Alabama had applied for a marriage license there.
Got a picture of them, too.
Were turned down. They did their case on their own. The women need the money because they need to pay their lawyer. These guys went pro se, acted entirely on their own.
Same judge.
They went to a clerk asking for a marriage license, got rejected, and then went to this same judge, or their case ended up with this same judge, who a few days after the first case handed down a second decision, again saying that the denial of a marriage license to them was unconstitutional. So that covers both out-of-state marriages and in-state marriages.
And in both cases, Judge Callie, she gave a 14-day stay to February 9th, and that's when. And the thing is, the state is appealing to the 11th Circuit, which is based in Atlanta, which also has not been hearing the case, giving a stay in the Florida case.
Exactly.
This is why circuits are important.
The other argument that's going on in Alabama is whether the judge, having decided in these two cases for each of these couples, has in fact rendered decisions that apply statewide. And this is the same question that arose in Florida when the judge in the Panhandle was asked about, was challenged on whether his decision applied more widely than just to the couple
and he
in the case before him. And now she has clarified it, the Alabama judge, and she wrote a nifty little decision that took the actual paragraphs from the Florida judge's decision and published them.
Well, you know, why go to any more trouble than that?
Well, here's what she said, which is what the Florida judge said. She said, look, because people will tell you that, lawyers will tell you that, yes, unless you've declared it a class action or, you know, tried to get marriage licenses in every county and been refused and sued all the county clerks, that in fact, technically, it may only apply to the couples that have sued. But what the Florida judge said, and was then transposed into the Alabama court's decision, is look, you can rely on that, but the fact is that it's not just my decision that declares these marriage bans by Alabama unconstitutional. It's the Constitution. Oh. So as far as I'm concerned, this applies widely. But if you want to say that it only applies in these cases, then I guarantee you that other couples can go apply for marriage licenses, be refused, and they can come join this case, and they also will be declared as having a constitutional right to marry. And not only are you going to lose, but you're going to have to pay their court costs. So the Alabama officials were trying to rely on that technicality, but they're not going to get anywhere with it.
Well, as in some other cases, the Attorney General there wants the case stayed pending the Supreme Court decision, resolution of all these, saying that Alabama's sanctity laws, because that's what they call it down there, wait a minute. I'm sorry.
Are you in a different state?
No, I'm not in a different state. But that is what they're doing. We are going to go to some other states. Some states have been granted that kind of a stay, where they say we're going to stay until the Supreme Court reserves.
South Dakota has basically put stuff on hold, I think, until
they've appealed our win there to the 8th Circuit.
Georgia's on hold until the Supreme Court.
But in Nebraska,
well, we have not finished with Alabama.
Right.
Let's continue there. The next big thing in Alabama is Judge Roy Moore. You may remember this guy from 2003 when he had the 10 Commandments written in stone, placed on the courthouse lawn.
This guy's a piece of work.
He is. And you may also remember that the Judicial Commission in 2003 had him taken off the bench because he did that and refused to remove them. Well, he ran for office again in 2012 and was reelected by the fine citizens of Alabama who think he's just great.
And his statement on marriage equality is that it is the work of the devil. That's a quote.
So he wrote a letter to the governor of Alabama and laid out this whole case that is basically the Mike Huckabee case that says a federal judge cannot overrule the state constitution because the U.S. Constitution reserves to the states anything not enumerated in the Constitution. Totally overlooking, of course, equal protection and due process. He's one of these who says that judges have manufactured a right to same-sex marriage in the U.S. Constitution. So he's written a letter to the governor that says, don't pay any attention to this judge's ruling. This is really, you know, we as a state have a right to make our own laws. The voters have a right to their voted version. And Alabama laws, quote, have always recognized the biblical admonition stated by our Lord. This is a judge in Alabama. And so he says that, you know, the governor should just ignore the court ruling. So now...
There's a word for this. Massive resistance.
Yes. And they tried to do it about desegregation, too.
Segregation now, segregation tomorrow, segregation forever.
George Wallace, the governor of Alabama. Ring a bell? So that's why, in fact, we're so astonished that all of this is happening in Alabama. But now the Southern Poverty Law Center, which goes after right-wingers, particularly in the South, has filed a judicial ethics complaint with the same judicial commission that removed him from office over the Ten Commandments stuff. So we'll see how this plays out around Judge Moore. And meanwhile, out lesbian representative Patricia Todd in Alabama, who has fought the good fight for a long time there. It's shocking that she got elected to the legislature in Alabama.
Well, you had a couple of counties who immediately said that they would start issuing the licenses as soon as they could. So there must be fairly liberal governments in some of these towns,
certainly,
like Birmingham and Montgomery.
I do not mean to cast aspersions on the entire state of Alabama, but certainly we know historically that if one were to pick a state that was going to go along with same-sex marriage, Alabama would not be at the top of the list.
Approximately 81% of the populace there voted against same-sex marriage.
Right. So now some of these legislators are standing up and talking about all these nullification things and passing laws that will try to get them around this. And Patricia Todd has stood up and said, wait a minute, you guys are asserting all this family values stuff and how moral you are and how religious you are, but a lot of you are having affairs and you're big hypocrites, and if you don't shut up about this stuff, I'm going to make your little histories public, although I wasn't there in the room, so I don't have the evidence.
I didn't hold the candle.
So to speak. But let's hear from Representative
It's going to be
Patricia.
tough on all of us who are going to come out and have these discussions at work and with family members. But think about all the people in this room and all the love that you feel for each other and these couples who are about to make history of being the first couples married in the state of Alabama. We have families that will now be legitimized overnight. Children who will be affected and be able to call both parents mom or dad. And I am touched by the love that I've seen in these families who have children that would go to any length to protect their kids. And that's what it's on. That's a true family value. Many of y'all know that I have thrown the gauntlet down to my elected peers that should they decide to go and spout that family value, that I'm going to call them out. And I'm willing to jeopardize my political campaign to do it. This is the fight of our life. This is why I ran for office. I'm not a politician. I'm an activist. This is part of what I want to do. Listen, people thank me for what I've done. I haven't done anything. The two women in Mobile are the bravest two women I've ever known. They've been through a lot and will continue to go through a lot. We can't ever forget them. I know other people are going to talk about them.
Well, I like people who say I'm an activist, not a politician.
That's
I
why
wish
I wanted
we
to
had
run
more
that.
of them.
That's exactly why I wanted to run that clip.
This has become a national controversy. Oh, she's got to. I mean, Rosie O'Donnell was speaking out against her on the View for this, saying what she's doing is inappropriate and all this stuff. What are you talking about? I think it's highly relevant information.
Exactly.
Someone's standing up there saying, I value the family is sacred, blah, 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 and they're screwing around. They should be exposed.
Well, they're also public figures, and to say that they're immune from that kind of exposure is ridiculous.
Of course, I did think she should have just done it, not talked about it. But you think.
Well, she may or may not have the actual facts. So I think putting a threat out there to make people think twice is a good strategy.
What I was confused over in my notes was the response, our side's response to the Attorney General trying to seek a stay in the case and try to stop it and slow it down for the Supreme Court. Our side is saying that these sanctity laws, which limit marriage to a man and a woman, harm the children of same-sex couples, just as the Supreme Court found that DOMA did, and that the law humiliates thousands of children being raised by same-sex couples and brings financial harm to them.
I love our side making that argument because I think these kids have been left out of the conversation, and all these people who do talk about family values and protecting kids, et cetera, are dismissing the children of same-sex couples, and I think that's disgusting.
And that was one of the main things in Justice Kennedy's decision in the Windsor case, in the DOMA case, when he struck it down, was children. He asked the question in the court, what about these 40,000 children who are children of same-sex couples in California, wherever it was? So that is his concern. It's hard to see how he avoids siding with us in the case that's before them now, but we will see.
And the Alabama judge, in her decisions in these cases we've just discussed, also cited the harm to children of gay parents if same-sex marriage is not made legal.
So same-sex marriage, so are we done with Alabama?
Yes.
So in Oklahoma and in other states, now that these states are not, happy about having to do this.
Now that they've gotten their jaws off the floor at how fast same-sex marriage was legalized in their states.
They're trying to pass laws to limit gay rights in general and certainly around marriage. In Oklahoma, now first you have Representative Todd Russ, who has introduced a bill to say only an ordained minister can sign a marriage certificate. It bars county judges from performing weddings, and local clerks can't issue licenses. Couples can file affidavits for common law marriage if they don't want a church wedding, though Oklahoma doesn't have common law marriage. Then there's the famous Representative Sally Kern. She's introduced 3 bills. No taxpayer funds or government salaries can be used for licensing or supporting same-sex couples. State courts must dismiss challenges to the law, or the judges have to be removed from office. And this is Oklahoma, folks. And it allows parents to seek conversion therapy for their kids to end any unwanted sexual attraction. And it allows businesses to deny service to any, quote, now get this, LGBT person, group, or association. And you'll be immune to civil liability. Now, these religious freedom laws in these other states don't actually name gays. She does.
Well, that is actually an important point, because some of these laws could stand constitutional review if they are not explicitly targeted to LGBT people, because they wouldn't necessarily single us out, even if we understand that we are the target. So some of these religious freedom laws are problematic in the sense that we may have more difficulty challenging them. We'll challenge everything, and ultimately, I think we will win, but some of these fights will be tougher than others. Fascinating little development in Arkansas, where we have a case that went to the Supreme Court there, was argued, briefed, all ready for decision in November. But it's now 2 months later.
They couldn't make up their minds.
The court has not issued a decision, and most of the justices who heard the oral arguments and read the briefs have disappeared and been replaced by new ones. So Arkansas officials have asked the Supreme Court of Arkansas for new oral arguments.
Well, they got a point. Well, who's the hell supposed to make the judgment?
Well, it's an interesting question. The briefs haven't changed. The new judges could read the briefs. They can actually read the oral arguments. Well, so I suspect that it would be very, very, very unusual to re-argue a case, but not impossible.
There's also a federal case in Alabama. And
Arkansas.
Arkansas. And the 8th Circuit, in which they are, is threatening to dismiss it because the state hasn't paid their filing fees on the case and said, pay your fees.
Wait a minute. Isn't Arkansas in the 5th Circuit with Texas and Louisiana?
No, I could be wrong, but I wrote it down as 8th Circuit. I could be wrong, too.
No, that's Mississippi. Arkansas probably is in the 8th. I take it back.
Okay.
It's so,
put the map up of the circuits. No, they don't have it this week.
The case is proceeding in Nebraska. The judge was asked to put it aside while the Supreme Court figures out what it's doing. But the judge said, nope, we're going to go ahead with this.
He canceled a hearing that's supposed to take place this week, but he reset it for February 19th.
Yeah.
And he's not going to wait for Supreme Court resolution. In Missouri, an ACLU motion to lift the stay at the 8th Circuit, am I in the right circuit, was denied.
Yes.
But so was the Attorney General's motion to put the case on hold pending Supreme Court resolution.
It's strange that we actually pretty much know what states are in what circuits off the top of our heads.
We're getting there. We've learned a lot doing this show.
Georgia, 11th Circuit with Florida.
And Alabama.
Yes. The state asked that the case be put aside pending Supreme Court resolution, and our side actually agreed to that in Georgia, saying that it's going to be so long until they work through the procedures in the case, given where it is now, that it's going to happen about the time the Supreme Court would decide anyway. So they said, all right, fine, let's wait for the Supreme Court.
Well, Puerto Rico, which is part of the United States, it just has Commonwealth status. This is a place where we lost a case at the trial level on same-sex marriage. So Lambda Legal Defense filed an appeal brief at the First Circuit. So Puerto Rico was grouped in with the First Circuit way up in New England, where we have same-sex marriage, but we've never won a federal case.
Because we didn't have to, because all the states legalized it.
We won a state case in Massachusetts, but we never won a federal case, so that's going up there. And
in South Dakota, we got a good decision a week or two ago. The Attorney General will appeal that decision. Our side will ask that the stay against marriages actually being performed will be lifted as that process goes along. We don't have a decision on the lifting of the stay yet.
In Kansas is another state where the state government is putting up massive resistance. They've been ordered to issue licenses, so they have to issue licenses. 59 out of the 105 counties have done so. But the wicked governor, Sam Brownback, has directed all state agencies except the Department of Health and Environment, I'm surprised they even have one in Kansas, not to recognize the marriages. So you won't be able to file your taxes as married in the state, etc. Yeah. It's mean. It's mean.
And perhaps illegal. We've talked about how ironic it is, and in fact, factually a problem, that we're now racing through these marriage decisions so fast and legalizing marriage in so many states.
Is it too fast?
Yes. That you have the situation in many states where marriage is legal, but there are no non-discrimination laws. Well, Mother Jones magazine did a very interesting piece this week about a corollary to that, that marriage is legal in a lot of these states, but some of these states, 11 of these states where marriage is legal for same-sex couples, the sex education rules mandate teaching only about heterosexual relationships and explicitly forbid any mention of same-sex couples or homosexuality, and that this is an enormous conflict in the law that is going to screw people up. So there's a lot of work to be done to reconcile all these hypocrisies, differences.
Speaking of hypocrisy, did you enjoy the Iowa Freedom Summit where the Republican candidates got together? Now, some of the stories say that most of the candidates steered clear of same-sex marriage this year. Mike Huckabee did not.
Yeah, not Huckabee.
Huckabee argued for nullification. He said, nobody argues that Lincoln should have abided by the Dred Scott decision. He's comparing this to Dred Scott and slavery.
Not only did I see Selma this weekend, but I also saw a movie from about 32 years ago, 1983, about Medgar Evers, and slightly before the Selma marches. And all this stuff, very explicit in both these movies, and of course everything you can see on YouTube from Eyes on the Prize, which I watched in its entirety a few months ago. First of all, it's enormously depressing to think this all took place, certainly in my lifetime. Right. And just these images of people being beaten up and the attempts to avoid the laws.
Terrorism.
Exactly. And the killings and the beatings and the brutality and the discrimination, it just comes right out at you. Of course, I also watched the Holocaust film, the documentary that was unbelievably horrible.
Yep.
So when you see what people do to each other and you look at what we're going through now in the context of this longer historical review, you understand these impulses in people and despair and fight back.
Yes. This guy, Dr. Ben Carson, who is a Republican candidate for president and a nutcase. Oh, first of all, he said at the summit that we're a country that abides by the law, so that like if the law changes, we're going to have to abide by the same-sex marriage law. But then he joked that it's not smart to make a Christian baker bake a gay wedding cake because they might put poison in the cake.
He's a doctor.
He's a doctor. Oh, he's a horrible person.
Yeah.
All right.
All right, are we off marriage now?
Well, I'm done with it.
Okay. Well, as long as you're talking about presidential candidates, we can enjoy and celebrate the fact that, did you know there is a JebBushForPresident.com website? Now let's show you a picture of who owns the JebBushForPresident.com website. Got
the
that?
Oregon Tech Bears.
Yes.
Where are they?
Come on.
There they are!
They are not supporters of Jeb Bush for president.
That's CJ and Charlie. And when you go to the website, JebBushForPresident.com, you get, they're building a site around their challenges as a gay couple.
Yes, they said they put it up to educate family and friends about the policies of Jeb Bush.
Jeb, I don't think you're being very serious about being president if you don't buy up a lot of websites with your name in it.
Well, they bought this quite a few years ago, so they anticipated his run. Maybe Rupert Murdoch, Jeb Bush's new best friend, will try to talk him out of it.
Okay.
Well, hopscotching some other political news. In Virginia, the Senate committee there has killed the attempt to pass a no conversion therapy for minors bill and a bill that would have legalized second parent adoption.
Do you want me to come to my reunion at the University of Virginia? It will make me nervous about going through the state.
In the District of Columbia, the new mayor, Muriel Bowser, who beat David Catania, a very good gay candidate, former Republican who left the Republican Party because they were so obnoxious. She has appointed multiple lesbian and gay people to high positions in her new administration.
In California, we have a interesting new development. If you're a judge, you are now forbidden from participating in groups like the Boy Scouts that discriminate against LGBT people. The Supreme Court there eliminated this exception to the California Code of Judicial Ethics, but it raises interesting questions, of course. The Boy Scouts is an anti-gay organization, but so's the Catholic Church. You know, and people are allowed to belong to anti-gay religions.
And the U.S. military, which still has a ban on transgender people serving, is okay for judges to participate in. The Mormons are really upset about this because they're very entwined with the Boy Scouts, and they have a lot of Mormon judges in California and elsewhere. So the Mormons are claiming, oh, this is a violation of their religious rights. Now, of course, the reason they're being prohibited is because of their judicial function and association with a discriminatory
So why shouldn't they be forbidden from belonging to an anti-gay religious group? I mean,
like the Mormons.
Bob Jones University forbade mixed race dating in the 70s, and they lost a case, and they lost their federal funding over this kind of discrimination. They since, many years later, said it was okay. They got a revelation. But because they needed the money. These are anti-gay organizations as well. So the Mormons remain an anti-gay organization, and they made a big announcement this week. They put out a statement supporting state legislation in Utah banning discrimination based on gender identity and expression and sexual orientation.
They actually said these laws should be passed nationally.
Even the Human Rights Campaign calls this support deeply flawed because they want deep religious exemptions. And so that's why it's so dangerous, because they want the religious exemptions, these laws that we fought off in Arizona and we're fighting off in all these other states, they want it to be written into the law. Now look.
As it was written into the proposed Employment Non-Discrimination Act for a long time.
Right.
But they don't want them just for the churches. They want them across the board, no matter who you are. If you want to assert a religious objection to hiring someone or serving someone or providing housing, that's fine with them.
We are not challenging the right of a religious organization to, for instance, the Catholic Church, to only ordain men, even though that's evil. We can say that it's evil. They can do it legally. We don't challenge that right. But we're saying if you get, contracts and things like that, and you engage with the public, then you've got to abide by civil law.
Exactly. So don't let the Mormons pull the wool over your eyes.
Everybody's acting like it's, oh my God, they're coming out for gay rights in a very dangerous way.
No. In Maryland, there's some concern about the new governor there, Larry Hogan, a Republican. He issued an executive order saying state employees couldn't discriminate and listed sexual orientation as one of the reasons they couldn't discriminate. But he left off gender identity, and everybody went, oh, this is bad. But then his administration said, oops, just a little technical error, and they added it back in.
Pardon my ignorance as the co-host of the Gay USA show, but doesn't Maryland have a statewide gay LGBT rights bill?
Yes.
Yeah, so what the hell do we need an executive order from him for?
I can't answer that question for you.
Well,
in Texas, in Plano, Texas, the right wing has submitted signatures to have a referendum vote in May to repeal the non-discrimination law there. But the Human Rights Campaign says they're not going to fight that because the law is too flawed, and so they're not going to go in there and support any effort to maintain the law.
The Plano law was terrible.
Yeah.
Well, in Chicago, they added gender identity and national origin to the law, prohibiting police profiling on a variety of other bases. And advocacy groups are going to do sensitivity training with the police on this. But also in Chicago, an off-duty cop assaulted a girl for dressing like a boy. This was a security guard, I believe, in a school. And her brother had his front teeth kicked out defending her. Right. This occurred back in 2013, but the news is that they're filing a suit about it.
Yes. The security guard, who was an off-duty cop, said to the girl or transgender boy, I'm not sure how she identifies, if you're going to dress like a boy, I'm going to treat you like a boy, and beat the hell out of her.
Not supposed to do it to boys either.
Yeah.
Officer.
In Wyoming, the legislature has received for consideration a non-discrimination bill, including sexual orientation and gender identity. We'll follow the progress of that bill.
I want to go back to the Scouts for a second, because the ads, and this is not entertainment news, the ads for the movie The Imitation Game, this is Harvey Weinstein's campaign to win Oscars for it. They're quoting from people basically supporting Alan Turing as a gay icon. So they quote from former Defense Secretary Robert Gates, who did usher out the don't ask, don't tell policy, saying, Turing's fate should be a constant reminder of how foolish and self-defeating it is for national leaders to deny themselves the benefit of a mind of a genius, most especially for ignoble reasons. Turing is a hero for all time, but he's head of the Boy Scouts now, and he's firing gay scout leaders, which is why we're still protesting the Scouts. And then Harvey Weinstein is saying he would give up his honor from the British Empire, the commander of the British Empire, if they would give it to Alan Turing. And this is all to win an Oscar.
Well,
and, wait a minute. Plus, he wants the 49,000 other people who were convicted of buggery to be pardoned. And the Human Rights gets the Human Rights Campaign to join this campaign.
Gets them. He paid for the ads that ran in the New York Times and elsewhere, signed by Chad Griffin, saying, how dare you not pardon the other 49,000, with no mention of the fact that it was paid for by Harvey Weinstein as part of his Oscar campaign.
And I would just say to my friends at the Human Rights Campaign, if you care so much about those 49,000 people, how about the hundreds of thousands who were convicted under sodomy laws in the United States of America? And quite frankly,
to this day, even though those convictions are illegal.
And quite frankly, I don't remember the Human Rights Campaign really playing a big role in the getting rid of the sodomy laws, which was all a legal fight.
Yep.
I mean, we got rid of sodomy laws through legislative action in the 60s when it was part of legislative reform, and then some states like New York stalled on it, and we had to get rid of it through the courts.
Ultimately, Lawrence v. Texas. All right, well, what about ex-fire chief Kelvin Cochran in Atlanta, who is now suing or filed a complaint with the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission for religious discrimination over his firing.
Yep. It's
we don't think he's going to get anywhere
he
with
got
this.
filed for violating the rules, for not getting clearance to write his anti-gay, anti-woman, anti-Semitic book, and for refusing to be quiet while he was being investigated. He's a piece of work.
He is. And as we move down the ladder of offenses, what do you think of President Obama in his blogger interview defending same-sex marriage, saying it's crazy not to legalize it, even if you disagree with their lifestyle choice?
The fact of the matter is they're not bothering you. Well, now you're bothering us by using words like that. So this is what happens when you get with the young people.
This is what happens when you
Barack,
elect a straight person instead of a gay person.
This is what happens. Well, all right.
I'm sure he's been educated on
All
this.
right, some very...
In Nashville, a private Christian school, Davidson Academy, has rejected for pre-kindergarten the son of a gay couple, one of whom is a pastor, and the two of whom submitted their son for entry to this academy because they want the kid to have a Christian education.
It's an anti-gay religion, and they worship a false god.
Yeah.
So keep them out, I'd say.
But good news in Texas, where Saks Fifth Avenue department store has withdrawn its assertion that Title VII of the Civil Rights Act does not cover transgender people.
Yes.
They had a former employee is suing them for discrimination, and their reply from their lawyers said, well, you can't sue because you're not protected because, among other things, Title VII doesn't cover you. But in fact, there are several explicit decisions from the EEOC and courts saying, yes, it does, and even the Department of Justice has said it does. And the Department of Justice filed in this case and said it does.
And Sachs also got a letter from the Attorney General of the state of New York, Eric Schneiderman, who said this office is very concerned about your stance in the Texas case because it raises questions about whether you are complying with New York City law, which forbids discrimination based on gender identity.
So Sachs, to their credit, has amended their filing.
At the point of a gun.
Well, yes, but you know, you hire these lawyers and they are just stupid.
Yeah, but you got to...
They're stupid. And they make these filings and they're just wrong. And Sachs clearly said to them, change it.
I have to say,
they're still disputing that they discriminated.
I was talking to a lawyer the other day, and it bothered me, who was handling a case that I'm working on, and it bothered me how much I had to tell him about what I was paying him $400 an hour to. This was not a personal case.
Yeah.
Anyway.
All right, on to...
Well, where? Where do you want to go?
I was going to the terrible violence cases.
Okay, yes.
In Minnesota, a teacher, coach, and founder and leader of the Gay Straight Alliance at the local high school.
I have a picture of him, David Frigard, 46,
has
art
been
teacher.
murdered by a 19-year-old. Now, he's straight, he has a family. There is some question about whether he was murdered because he ran the Gay Straight Alliance at the high school. Some people think that.
I mean, this young person who's been charged with this, Bailey Garcia, his name is 19, apparently was going off the deep end that night, threatening everybody, threatening to kill himself,
Well, he was also
running around with a shotgun and shooting at things.
He was refused service at the bar that this guy owned. Because he's only 19.
Well, it's a tremendous loss for the community, is the point.
He was beloved as a teacher, and it really is a loss. Also, in Tyler, Texas, Ty Underwood, 26 years old, transgender woman, nursing assistant on her way to nursing school, shot dead. Looking into the details of that.
Better news from Arizona, though. We have a picture of Monica Jones. Monica is a trans woman who had been convicted for intent to solicit prostitution, and it was overturned by the Superior Court of Arizona in a case brought by the ACLU. She was arrested in 2013 for essentially what we call walking while trans, because under the law, quote, any bodily gesture can get you arrested for intent to engage in prostitution. And 47% of trans women of color have been incarcerated at some point in their lives. That is a shocking statistic.
And another trans woman of color, Lamia Beard in Norfolk, Virginia, was shot dead last week. That is 2 publicly identified murders of trans women of color in the first month of this year.
In Indiana, a bill to let government contracts go to companies that discriminate based on religion was approved 7-0 in a Senate committee. So they can hire based on religious beliefs using your tax dollars. I mean, here in New York, of course, we make you sign a piece of paper if you're a religious group saying, oh, we won't discriminate. Of course they do. Nobody does anything about it. But at least they sign a statement that says they won't.
Well, in Virginia, North Carolina, and South Carolina, activists are starting a new campaign called Equality Means Business, where they're going to publicize and highlight businesses that welcome LGBT employees, customers, et cetera. And they're going to try to make it their business to show that there are companies you might want to do business with.
We told
because
you
they have
in
good
Illinois
policies.
that Governor Bruce Rauner has nominated an anti-gay Reverend James Meeks to head the State Board of Education. Well, Lambda Legal is urging him to withdraw that nomination. And in San Diego, the City Council approved 76 units of senior LGBT housing for North Park, focused on those with fixed incomes.
And there's going to be an announcement next week by SAGE of a nationwide effort to improve the picture on senior LGBT housing.
Okay.
More on that after the announcement next week.
International news.
Yes. Where do you want to start?
Well, I think the big news is in Egypt, where the acquittal of 26 men arrested in a bathhouse in November and paraded half naked through the streets has been upheld by an appeals court, and the case is over.
Yep.
And some of the men are looking to sue the officer who led the raid and the so-called journalist, right-winger Mona Iraqi, who instigated the case. It's believed that the government brings up these cases because they want to distract from all the economic woes in the country. They actually ask journalists to write them.
True all over the world.
Okay.
In Ireland, as we get closer to the referendum on same-sex marriage, 2 more prominent people have come out. High Court Justice Eileen Donnelly and Women's Gaelic Players Association star Valerie Mulcahy. So the women are joining the charge out of the closet.
My feeling is, I think they don't want to wait till they get married to acknowledge that they're gay.
To each
like
other?
Jim Neighbors did. Well, not each other.
Whatever.
Maybe they are married. I don't know.
A terrible story from Turkey. A transgender female soldier died after surgery. It was the first sex reassignment or sex confirmation surgery by this doctor who clearly flubbed it, and this transgender soldier is now dead.
What's going on in Portugal? The parliament there rejected a draft law to allow gay couples to adopt children. The left parties voted in favor of it, but it was defeated by 30 votes in a 220-seat chamber. The socialists are favored to win the election in the fall there, but...
we'll come back for another try. You know, adoption has always been the
and then
hardest
there's
thing
Greece.
in Europe.
I was encouraged to read that the new socialist prime minister, Alexis Tsipras, told the Archbishop of Athens, I don't need you for my swearing in. I'm an atheist, which was
Stay
nice.
away.
But then I read right before the election, he started backtracking on gay rights issues. They had been in favor of legalizing relationships, and then they didn't. And part of it is that they've made an alliance with the Greek Independent Party in order to govern, and the Greek Independent Party is very anti-gay.
Well, here's the lead I think we've buried. The Pope has met with a transgender man, Diego Narea Lejaraga, and his fiancée of Spain. They wrote him a letter, the Pope, and talked about their situation.
What did they talk about?
And the Pope said, come meet with me.
I read the story, but I didn't get anything out of it.
Well, they didn't talk about what they talked about, but they did meet for 90 minutes.
Well, inquiring minds want to know.
Well, clearly the Pope had an inquiring mind.
I mean, again, this is all on the run. Do something.
I'm with you. I'm with you, Andy. I'm not arguing that
Obama met
you.
with a lot of people on his trip. He met with Good Luck Jonathan of Nigeria. Now, of course, he wants to talk about Boko Haram and
I thought it was
stopping that.
Kerry who met with Good Luck
No,
Jonathan.
Obama. I saw a picture of the two of them together.
Okay.
And then the new king of Saudi Arabia and a big visit to India, where the President Obama spoke out against. Oppression of women and girls.
Yes.
But I didn't read anything about him raising LGBT rights issues. And so 13 human rights groups have urged Obama to take action against Gambia for the crackdown on gays.
Yes, that's a continuing ask. Well, in Nigeria, after the U.S. left on their visits, religious authorities, I put in quotes, arrested 12 suspected homosexuals at a supposed gay wedding. So any talking the U.S. did to Good Luck Jonathan did not have much of an effect.
In the United Kingdom, a general plans to come out, well, I guess we should wait until he does it, to counter the idea that homophobia is not a problem. This is a man who's been married to a woman with kids. He says anti-gay bullying is rife in the ranks despite the policies. And he would be the only senior officer to come out was General Tammy Smith, who married her partner in 2012. They come out to get married.
In Chile, the legislature has given final approval to the civil unions bills, and President Michelle Bachelet, is that in? Will sign the bill.
Then in Russia, the oppression goes on. The leader of that online support group for LGBT teens, who ran afoul of the anti-gay propaganda law, was fined 50,000 rubles, about $775, on a case brought by the Russian telecommunications agency. They said they got 150 complaints against her, and that she lacked the expertise to deal with vulnerable teens.
Please.
No, leave them to us.
We told you last week we were going to do a demonstration against Russian conductor Gergiev.
We didn't have to do it. They canceled the performance.
Because of the snow. But I suspect there will be other demonstrations against them. In China, a gay man has filed what is believed to be the first discrimination suit. He was fired after being caught on tape in a dispute, and the video went viral, so he was identified as gay from that, and his job fired him, so he is now filing suit about that.
We have that story?
Yes, in Jerusalem, a transgender woman, Kay Long, was barred from stepping up to the women's section of the Western Wall, the Wailing Wall, and she was then barred from the men's section.
Good God.
But she went quietly. She said that she did not want to make a big brouhaha, but it certainly became a news item. And in Paris, a court has convicted 3 people of hate crimes because they went on Twitter and put up a hashtag saying, "Let's burn the gays," and another one, "Gays must die." So they have been convicted and fined for inciting hatred and violence, which is certainly a touchy subject in France these days.
Well, the big health news this week was a new study that found singing show tunes can help alleviate dementia. Researchers from George Mason University studied patients in nursing homes. Singing is better than listening to songs, and among the songs that they were sung were "Somewhere Over the Rainbow," "The Sound of Music," and "When You Wish Upon a Star." So I'm going to have to start going to Marie's Crisis Cafe more.
I sing on the golf course and in the shower, but not those songs.
Okay.
And the CDC has put out a report saying that syphilis was up 10% in 2013. It takes them a year to get the figures out, particularly for men having sex with men. The FDA has approved a new pinprick test for syphilis that should make testing easier. You might want to consider it.
In porn news, California said you got to wear condoms when you do porn, so they all moved to Nevada. Nevada's considering regulations because 2 guys got HIV, but they're not part of the professional industry, which says we do strict testing and nobody's getting it. And Nevada says we're going to we're going to do this for 2 years.
I think testing is not an adequate policy. ACT UP New York is doing a demonstration this Saturday against HRC for their big dinner at the Waldorf, asking them to do more for AIDS, work with local groups.
What time is that?
I don't know.
It's for the dinner.
Yeah, but then HRC said, well,
time.
let's talk. So ACT UP is going to meet with them on Friday.
Good. Well, I am all for a meeting.
Yeah, okay.
As long as you get something.
In entertainment news.
So they had the SAG-AFTRA Awards this week, and Mark Ruffalo won Best Actor in a TV Movie for playing the Larry Kramer character in Larry Kramer's The Normal Heart.
Best TV Comedy Actress, Uzo Aduba, who is Crazy Eyes in Orange is the New Black, and Orange is the New Black won Best Ensemble Cast.
And it includes Laverne Cox and Leah Delaria in that cast, who are a transgender and a lesbian.
And in all of these award shows, we get Kevin Spacey winning Best Closeted Actor for House of Cards.
He didn't show up. The ABC network has ordered a sitcom about the life of sex columnist Dan Savage. It seems to be focused on his earlier childhood or his teenagehood when he comes out.
A picture-perfect family is turned upside down when the youngest son comes out. So we'll miss some of Dan's adult exploits, which are more interesting. Empire is just... it's a volcano. It's blowing up so big.
It's on my DVR tonight. How's that? Will you believe it?
Yeah, but you should look at it on demand and catch up with the first few episodes. Okay. Don't try to plunge it at this point.
Has a big gay character who's hated by his father.
Yeah.
Played by Terrence Howard is so... You know,
but he's just great. He's great. I've been picking up some details
Terrence
on
Howard's
this.
playing the father.
Yeah. One of the producers and writers of the show is Eileen Chaikin, who did The L Word for Showtime, which was one of my all-time favorite shows. I thought The L Word was great. So I'm fascinated that she's involved. You know, the whole thing is a production of Lee Daniels, the out gay African-American director. Who is just doing this juiciest of all shows. It's so popular, the ratings are so high that it has already been picked up for a second season, which is pretty unheard of after you've run 2 episodes of the show. We're now up to 4, I think, this week. And Lee Daniels gave an interview where he said he put the show on Fox when there was a bidding war over it because half his family couldn't afford HBO. And he really wanted it in the context of Fox and what he presumes to be a more conservative, homophobic audience, where it would get noticed that way. And I think it's a brilliant, brilliant decision. I'm really glad he did it that way.
Well, it seems to be saving the Fox network, which I'm not crazy about.
No, but whatever.
And I wasn't crazy about A Month in the Country. Now, I was looking forward to this. This is a play by Turgenev from 1850, for God's sakes. And I kind of wanted to see it because it was so controversial, they couldn't get it produced till 1872. Because it's about a woman who's married, that's Taylor Schilling there on the left, who Peter Dinklage plays a guy who's friends with her, who's in love with her, and she's in love, next picture, with a young guy played by Mike Feist, who was last in Newsies, you know, and that's all very scandalous because she's got a husband. So they couldn't produce it. But it was directed by Peter Dinklage's wife, Erica Schmidt. I don't like to say things about this, but I mean, she commissioned a new translation, and the guy who did it says, this was really a rush job. He says it in the program. I only had a month to do this, and I usually take for 4 months and this kind of stuff. Well, it shows. They play it like a sitcom, and it can be a great play. I've seen great productions in the past, but Peter Dinklage and Mike Feist actually are very good.
Well, we've talked about ABC.
Oh, and it's sold out, so forget it.
ABC commissioning the pilot for the Dan Savage sitcom. I'm not sure they've actually picked up the show. It's on their list of pilots. Ellen is producing a new sitcom called One Big Happy, which is about a lesbian who is a mom, and a lesbian, her wife, and her mom. We'll see. It's not getting quite as much notice as the Dan Savage one.
Maybe there's somebody out there who would like to help us make a sitcom out of this show, because I'm telling you.
Aren't we a sitcom already?
Exactly, but you know, that way.
But in a longer format.
Now, who would play us in the, we'd have to play ourselves.
We'll get to that. A couple of more pop weird references. First of all, People magazine has this big story on Joel Grey coming out at 81.
82.
I was handing out medals at the gay games with him in 1994.
Well, he says he was out to his friends and family and everybody knew, kind of a thing. But this is the first time he's publicly discussing it in an interview, I guess.
I think he's been publicly referred to as gay for years. But
so was Tony Randall, and he never came out.
Well, and then the question is Bruce Jenner coming out as transgender?
What's going on there?
Well, Kim Kardashian, who I do not pay any attention to, but I couldn't avoid mention of her today.
I couldn't pick her out of a lineup.
Oh, I think you could. But she was asked about Bruce and what he's up to. And she did not deny that he is transitioning, but she said he will talk when he is ready.
When he's 82 in People magazine.
It's being perhaps it's being taken as a sign that he is transitioning. In addition to watching Selma, I did watch this Night Must Fall documentary on, I think it ran on HBO.
Yes.
I highly recommend it. It will break your heart, but it's so important to see this.
Isn't the documentary kind of about the making of the documentary that Hitchcock made out of Holocaust film?
Yes.
I saw parts of it. And I've seen the documentary that Hitchcock made.
Well, that would be
online.
unusual.
It's on YouTube.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, Night Must Fall is the name of the documentary.
Yes.
But the HBO version is really heartrending and important to watch.
Well, it's also political because the American government did not want it, the British government didn't want it shown after the war because, well, we got to make peace with Germany. We don't want to rub it in their faces how evil they were.
Well, that's what comes up at the end of the documentary. They talk about that and the politics of it. I also was blown away by two documentaries that I saw on TV, one of which is nominated for an Oscar, that I had not expected to be blown away by. And the first one was Finding Vivian Maier.
Oh, my God. I just saw it the other day, too. Unbelievable.
Really fascinating.
It's about this woman who worked as a nanny all her life, and she was one of the greatest photographers of all time. I mean, look her up. Vivian Maier.
Pictures.
Now, of course, spell the name M-A-I-E-R. It's not the only way she spelled it in her lifetime. She was quite a character, and she almost never developed her film. So they found 100,000 negatives.
Well, this whole thing started with this young guy who goes to auctions and buys contents of storage lockers, happened to buy this, and started looking at this stuff and said, oh my God, because my favorite moment was the legendary photographer Mary Ellen Mark talking about how genius these pictures are and how important, and they really are. Every last one of these pictures
they take your breath away.
They really do.
I mean, if you like people like, Diane Arbus and Ouija and you could name all the great street photographers.
I think these are better.
Winograd.
These are better.
Winograd. All these, they are amazing.
Yeah.
And but she's a nanny, so she takes the kids to the worst part of town and says, come on, we're going. And she wants to take pictures in the slums.
And then she got crazier and crazier, and she wasn't very nice to the kids. But it's definitely worth watching, Finding Vivian Maier.
Great.
And the other one I liked and hadn't expected to was the Roger Ebert documentary, Life Itself.
Yeah,
and I learned a lot
seen it yet.
more about him that I hadn't expected to, and I really liked it. And I also recommend to you the article in last week's New Yorker. Well, it's a book review, and the book is Robert Beeche's Gay Berlin, Birthplace of a Modern Identity, which sounds absolutely fascinating.
Let's get him in here.
Okay. Come on in.
Take care. Thanks.
We'll
Thanks for
see you
watching.
next week.
Bye.
Bye.